Hey everyone, welcome to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to guide you through today's topic because it is just a fascinating deep dive. We're analyzing a really compelling political theory that popped up around the recent primary defeat of Kentucky Congressman Thomas Massie. Honestly, whether you're totally glued to the daily ins and outs of Washington, or you're just kind of curious about how social media and voter behaviors are shifting right now, this is the perfect case study. We're going to look at how online influence, strict party loyalty, and shifting political identities are literally colliding in real time. Okay, let's dive into this roadmap. First up, we have Massie's primary downfall. Then we'll look at Texas versus Kentucky, explore the online political bubble, dig into the post-Trump GOP, and finally discuss bipartisanship and the future.
Section 1. Massie's primary downfall, the catalyst.
So to really grasp the broader shifts happening in American politics right now, we first have to understand exactly what happened to Thomas Massie. Here's an incumbent who essentially found himself on a collision course with his party's leader, Donald Trump. Now, the source material points out a really crucial defining characteristic here. Massie is a libertarian. What does that mean in practice? Well, it means his political philosophy doesn't exactly fit neatly into your standard party boxes. Because of that independent streak, there are a bunch of issues where he naturally splits from mainstream Republican stances. And as you can probably guess, that set the stage for some serious friction with Trump, because Massie definitely wasn't voting as a guaranteed rubber stamp for the party. So where did that friction actually hit a breaking point? Well, the host of our source material argues it came down to three distinct areas that ultimately caused Massie's downfall. First, he had an intense focus on the Jeffrey Epstein files. And look, while those crimes are incredibly serious and universally condemned, the host notes that this focus felt really disconnected from the daily, localized legislative concerns of the people actually living in Massie's district. Second, his foreign policy stances, specifically regarding Israel, ran directly counter to the established party line. And third, he just had this consistent track record of voting against his own Republican colleagues. Now, Massie defended his positions fiercely, right? He claimed that massive outside groups were pouring money into his race to take him down. He stated, and I quote, "They think they can buy Kentuckians because they tried to buy my vote and I wouldn't sell it." The host of the analysis draws a really interesting direct comparison here. They note that this specific type of rhetoric heavily mirrors the talking points of popular internet podcasters, people like Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens, rather than the messaging you typically hear from traditional local politicians. Section 2. Texas versus Kentucky, a tale of two primaries. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the host's theory that we are actually watching two entirely different ideological battles happening within the exact same political party. Think about it. The Texas primary, that was your classic battle of the old guard GOP, represented by John Cornyn, squaring off against the newer Maga wing, represented by Ken Paxton. But Kentucky was a totally different fight. Kentucky wasn't old guard versus Maga at all. It was the Maga wing going up against what the host calls the podcaster or online sphere, represented by Thomas Massie. It really shows a party that's fracturing into very specific, totally separate media ecosystems. Section 3. The online political bubble, engagement versus reality. This brings us to the core thesis presented by the host, which is this super modern phenomenon where politicians fall into a trap. They end up mistaking massive online engagement for their actual real-world local political base. Think of it like this. A politician posts something really controversial, right? It might go viral, getting millions of views and thousands of comments from a totally global audience. It feels like massive support. But the source argues that this viral engagement just does not accurately reflect the daily concerns or the actual views of the American voters who physically live in that politician's specific district. To firmly ground this theory in reality, the source highlights a live comment from a viewer named Gina B. She actually lives right there in Massie's district, and she explains exactly why she ended up pulling her support for him. She wrote, "Thomas Massie voted against the Republicans 73 times since President Donald J. Trump was reelected. She explicitly points out that she voted for Trump's agenda, and she totally expects her representative in Congress to help pass that agenda, not stand in the way of it." Just take a second and look at that number. 73. 73 times voting against the party. I mean, this beautifully illustrates the tension at the absolute heart of this explainer. While Massie might have felt he was taking these incredibly principled, libertarian, independent stands, which, by the way, got him massive applause from the online podcaster sphere, actual local voters like Gina felt immense frustration. Because in this context, those voters strongly preferred loyalty to the agenda they originally voted for, rather than an ideological independence that just blocked that agenda from happening. Section 4. The post-Trump GOP, an identity crisis.
Now we bring in the perspective of the source's guest, Democratic strategist Jose Aristimuño, who poses a pivotal question directly to you, the audience. What is the game plan in a post-Trump world? He argues that the GOP is currently suffering from a massive identity crisis. In his view, the Maga base is intensely loyal to Donald Trump the individual, rather than a cohesive set of specific policy principles that can just be easily handed down to the next politician in line. And according to him, this is creating a pretty big vacuum of leadership for the future. And this brilliantly illustrates the divide they see moving forward by comparing the political profiles of J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio. Just look at the contrast here. The host and guest analyze Vance as being very online. He's deeply engaged in the podcast sphere and Twitter, and primarily appeals to the online right. Rubio, on the other hand, is analyzed as largely offline. He's traditional, he's family values-oriented, and according to the source, he has a much broader base appeal that can capture not just the MAGA base, but Hispanic voters, swing voters, and independent thinkers too.
To really highlight how broad that appeal might actually be, Aristimuño, who again is a Democratic strategist, made this rather surprising statement on the show. He said, "If it's between Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Marco Rubio, I'm voting for Marco Rubio any day." The source uses this to point out, quite neutrally, how a traditional, less online candidate might actually have the power to build a surprisingly broad coalition, potentially pulling in moderate voters from the complete other side of the aisle. Section 5. Bipartisanship and the Future, a New Path Forward. So, moving towards some practical strategy, Aristimuño outlines a clear step-by-step game plan for his own Democratic Party. First, he advocates for playing the middle lane and acting as genuine independent thinkers, rather than just being party rubber stamps. Second, he emphasizes the strategic value of knowing when to simply stay quiet. You don't always need to be the absolute loudest voice in the room. And third, he really believes in leading by example, which means actually sitting down, rolling up your sleeves, and meeting the political opposition halfway to find real solutions. He likens this to a much-needed return to a JFK Democrat approach. So the crucial point is this. Both the host and the Democratic guest fundamentally agree on the absolute danger of echo chamber politics. When politicians completely refuse to engage with the other side, they just lose touch with reality. Independent thinking, on the other hand, requires a genuine willingness to honestly debate, to cross party lines, and yes, even to praise the opposition when they actually get something right. Breaking out of our partisan media bubbles is just vital if we want an honest assessment of political realities today. Let's move to and see how this builds into something even bigger. Right before concluding, the guest makes this hard pivot away from traditional politics to a pretty stark warning about technology. He states bluntly that artificial intelligence is the absolute requirement for the future of running the country. The source outlines exactly why this implementation is so incredibly critical. Aristimuño argues that AI is not just some passing tech fad. It is essential for maintaining our military superiority, sustaining our economic power, and absolutely crucial for competing against global rivals like China, who are already heavily investing in it. He strongly urges everyone, from local business entrepreneurs to the older politicians sitting in Washington right now, to start experimenting with AI tools like ChatGPT or Claude immediately, just so the nation doesn't fall behind. Which leaves us with a really profound final thought to chew on today, based on absolutely everything we've unpacked, from Thomas Massie's primary defeat to the incredibly strong allure of viral internet engagement, all the way to the looming necessity of advanced technology. The ultimate question is this. Will our future leaders choose the comfort of the online echo chamber or the reality of the American voter? It is a question that challenges all of us to think a whole lot deeper about the media we consume, the metrics we actually value, and the politicians we ultimately choose to support. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today. Keep asking those great questions, and as always, keep learning.